my great students. It is me, Dr. Weston Jameson, here and back with you for another stellar episode of Macroeconomics, the class, today featuring money creation. Today we are going to be talking about how money is created in the system, what money is it important, what do we do with it, that kinds of things. Without further ado, let's get right into it. I think it's very smart to get started. Again, money creation. Wes, I'm here. Let's get started. What is money? I will tell you, money, I've been told this since I was a very young student starting in economics. Money is fiction. Money is fiction. Money is not a real thing, okay? And lately we've been seeing a lot of authors play with this idea. This is Jacob Goldstein with Planet Money. He says that money is a made-up thing, and it is. It's a made-up thing, but yet it is so important to our lives. It is everything that drives us, right, these days. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly it is from an economic perspective. We think of money as a medium of exchange. Now, Dr. West, what is a medium of exchange? Well, that's easy, fair student. It is anything that is accepted as a payment. Now, early on in our lessons here, we talked about bimetallism, and we're going to get to that in a second. But before we started trading metals, we were trading goods. We call this bartering. This means when, let's say, you wanted this fish. Well, I have this apple, and we would trade, and I would get this fish, and you would get the apple. But this leads to a very particular problem with bartering. What to do with these things? Let's say I have this sheep, and I want 2 bags of grain. Is 2 bags of grain worth 1 sheep? That's okay. Let's say that we've set that is what we need. 1 sheep is worth 2 bags of grain. Well, if this is our unit of account, the unit of account is now our sheep. What if I only wanted 1 bag of grain? Does that mean I have to cut the sheep in half? That's disgusting. But if this is our unit of account, then I would need, if I wanted 1 bag of grain, I would need to cut this sheep in half, which leads to another problem. Money should be a store of value. And let's go back to the fish example. Let's say I just caught this beautiful fish, and it is now my valuable fish, but I'm going to take this valuable fish and I want apples, right? But I don't want apples today. I want apples 3 weeks from now. Well, does this fish store value? Will I be able to get the same apples for today than I will in 3 weeks? Well, no, because fish go bad, they go disgusting, they go rotten. So bartering does not lead to a very good store of value, even though it might act as a unit of account, is not very one that's easily break upable. So we created commodity money. Commodity money, again, we use the example of bimetallism. It's where money is worth something a little bit more than just a store of value or a unit of account. For instance, we first started using gold and silver because, to be frank, people love shiny rocks. We loved shiny rocks, we love shiny gold, we love shiny silver. Although today, technology has told us that there are uses for silver and gold in our technology that leads it more than just being shiny rocks, although we still love shiny rocks. However, over time, while our money was created with gold, it then became equivalent to gold, and we called this the gold standard, of course. But then, of course, like I talked about, we started running out of gold for the amount of money we needed. And that led us to, of course, we call it fiat money. Now, what fiat money is essentially anything that the government has deemed as money. And right now, in your pocket, may be this currency right now. Now, what is backing this currency? There is nothing backing this currency. This currency is only backed by the faith that you think it will be worth something. Now, given that we have things in this country that should give you some of that faith, largely being that we have a lot of oil in this country. People across the world want oil, and thus they want to use our dollars. However, secondarily, and maybe even more importantly, is our ginormous mega military. And our military kind of guarantees that people will be forced to use this dollar, right? These are the things that back up our dollar. But getting back to the economics of it all, fiat money then creates our money supply. And simply what money supply is inside of a country, I hate to say it like this, but it is the supply of money in a country. Now, there are several measurements that we use as economists to measure the money supply, and we're going to get to at least one of them in a little bit, but I want to just tell you that there are three, and your book covers them very well. That is one called M1, which is the narrowest form of measurement. There is M2, which is slightly broader. And then, of course, there's M3, which is pretty much everything. It covers every single thing. We're talking about currency. We're talking about checks, traveler's checks. We're talking about the ones and zeros of the stock market. Pretty much every little bit of dollars inside the country is covered by M3. Now, I want to take just a second here. Let's pause just 2 seconds. Because in order to get to the next parts of where I want to get to, we have to describe a little bit of what the banking system is here inside our country. Now, this might be very simplistic, it might be very basic, so, I totally understand if you want to skip this part. Give me 2 seconds, though. You are probably most likely a depositor, meaning that you have money that you're going to give to the bank, right? Here's your $100. You're like, I worked hard for this, I'm going to give it to a banker, and you think that this money, this $100, is going to stay in the bank for safekeeping. Well, unfortunately, that is not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is the bank is going to lend out that money to other borrowers, and that is how the bank stays in business because it then charges interest, right? Now, a little bit more I want you to know about this. We use in this country something called a fractional reserve requirement. Now, once again, you are this depositor. You take your money and you give it to the bank, right? Now, once again, the bank, in order to make money, is going to invest this money and let people borrow it, and they will get some interest from it. But inside this country, we have something called the reserve requirement, which means the bank is supposed to reserve a bit of your deposit to make people feel better, and we're going to get to why in just a second. Now, reserve requirements have ranged anywhere from 5 to 15% in this country, and that all started from something called panic at the bank scale. Of course, the financial panic of 1907, where the stock market fell by 50%, a whole lot of banks closed, and the remaining banks faced bank runs. What is a bank run, you ask, Dr. West? Well, let me tell you, fair student, this, my friends, is what a bank run looks like. It is when everybody is rushing to the bank to try to pull out their money because they got this fear that all of a sudden the bank is not going to have their money. Well, in truth, the bank probably does not have all of their money. And so in order to stop that, this led to the invention of the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve says some things, and we're going to get to them in a second, but the Federal Reserve is the bank's bank. You, the depositor, cannot go to the Federal Reserve. Only banks can go to the Federal Reserve. And they can say, oh my gosh, I need a giant insert of money before I fail. And the Federal Reserve is going to be like, yes, we're going to give you that money instantly. It should stop bank runs. Does it? Well, But essentially, we call what the Federal Reserve does monetary policy. Now, the monetary policy in this country specifically is run by something called the Federal Open Market Committee. The Federal Open Market Committee, going back, is the leaders of each one of these Federal Reserve banks. There are 12 of them. They cover St. Louis, Kansas City, San Francisco, Dallas, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, Cleveland, Atlanta, Richmond, Philadelphia, and Boston. And those 12 people, they get together and form the FOMC. And they have goals. Keep in mind, these are the goals I want you to know, okay? They want to keep unemployment below 6.5. We talked about this at the beginning. Yes, unemployment below 6.5. Do they do a very good job of it? So far, the numbers indicate yes. Are the numbers correct? I don't know. They are also trying to make sure that our GDP, our gross domestic product, increases 2 to 3% each year. Remember, GDP, our gross domestic product, is our nation's yearly paycheck. I know there's some problems with that definition, but for this class, that's kind of how I want you to think about it. Now, lastly, their last goal is this idea of inflation, right? The increase of prices. They want to keep the increase of prices somewhere between 2 and 2.5% each year. Are they doing a very good job of that? Lately, it has been somewhere in the 3 to 4 to 5. Even in 2002, it reached 8%. So they have received some criticism, but we'll get to that later too. They have certain tools that make this happen. First of all, interest rate. They can control the interest rate, which should control the demand for money. They also control the amount of reserve requirement that a bank is supposed to keep. If you have less reserve requirement, that means that banks can lend out more. That's supposed to mean that there's more money in the system. That should help in times when times are a little bit rough. A higher reserve requirement would mean that banks have to keep more of the depositors' money and less money is in the system, right? And that should slow down things when things are getting a little too hot, a little too good going. Lastly, the open market operations. This, my friends, is how we create and take away money inside of our economy. When the FOMC buys, let's say, a bond. Now, a bond is a IOU. It's government debt. They'll buy the debt, and that means that the money that they send into these banks, and all of a sudden, the system is flush with cash. This is exactly how we create money into the system, right? Now, there are some problems that I think that are emerging within this system. Now, look, a couple things. We've got a couple chapters left in this semester, and I cannot wait to get into a little bit more of this. We'll probably finish off the semester with one of the biggest problems, but I want to just talk briefly about two problems, and you tell me what you think. The reserve requirements over time look like this. I want to just point this out. Boom. You may notice that in 2020, our reserve requirements dropped to zero. The Federal Reserve has ended all reserve requirements for every bank across America since 2020. Meaning that your banks are not required to keep any of the depositors' money. That feeling that your bank doesn't have your money could return again. But this is only one problem. The second problem is the money supply over time. Now, if we look at this graph, early on we could see that we had a slowly increasing money supply. This kept things growing, at a certain amount of time, very slowly. But around 2000, of course, we had, 9/11. We also had the dot-com crash. And all of a sudden, we increased our money supply, the growth of our money supply. Now, 2008 happened, right? And all of a sudden, we increase our money supply again, right? And then all of a sudden, 2020 happens, and we increase our money supply again. These increases are turning exponential. Now, is this a problem? Maybe. This is leading to uncharted waters. We have never seen a situation in which we have reserve requirements at zero and we have money supply expanding at an exponential rate. What could this mean for the future of our economy? I will be honest with you. There's a lot of economists out there that say, we're going to be fine. This is fine. America has an expandable economy. We have great consumers. And even though we've never been in these waters before, I'm sure everything's going to be fine. Me, on the other hand, Dr. West, I don't want to tell you that I'm afraid. But I am a bit afraid. We will see what happens. Now, next week, we're going to talk about monetary policy and the Fed. I think I'm going to have something special for you guys. Okay, we're going to have a very simple quiz this week, something to keep it simple and light. I cannot wait to see you guys again. I will see you again next week. I'm Wes, out. See you guys.